Hi there, this is Unmesh from PiXimperfect. Hope you're doing awesome and welcome to part 1 of matching subjects with backgrounds. This is one of the most requested and essential things to learn in Photoshop, especially if you're into compositing. However, here's the problem. Every subject is different, right? And so is every background. Each one of them is going to have different light setup, different colors, so there's not a one-way method to match the subject with the background, right? There's gotta be a lot of approaches. So that's why I'm making these videos in parts covering different types of approaches in different parts. Today we're going to be dealing with monochromatic composites, where we're going to create a monochrome composite where the background is already monochrome but the subject is in color. So without any further ado, let's get started. So here we are in Photoshop, and any other photos that we use in this tutorial is available for download. So if you want to download them, check the links in the description. Alright, so here we have our subject and the background. Both of them open as separate documents inside of Photoshop. If you're not sure how to open both of them, it's very simple. So let's close both of them. Let me show you right from scratch. I don't want to keep you confused. Alright, so let's go to that folder and we're going to copy, select both of them, okay, and click and drag and drop it inside of Photoshop, just like so. So both of them are now open as separate documents. Now what we have to do, first of all, we need to make a selection of the subject. Now we are in the subject document. So how shall we make a selection? Again, as we discussed, every subject is different, so is every background. So we're gonna have a different approach every single time we have a different setting. So right now, let's figure this out. What separates the subject from the background? Is it contrast? Is it color? What is it? In this case, the color is a striking factor and it's separating the subject from the background. And we're going to use that as our advantage. How to do that? Well, let's use select color range. So we're going to go to select and then color range. Now we want to say to Photoshop, hey Photoshop, select the background color. So in this case, what's the background color? It's orange, right? So right now it's already selected because I already did it, but let's do it right from scratch. Now once you open the color range, okay, you need to select this eyedropper tool, decrease the fuzziness all the way to 0. Okay, do that and make sure select sample colors is selected. Now you're going to click once here. So a little bit of the background is selected. So everything that you see in color, those areas are selected. Everything that you see in black is not selected, provided that selection preview is black matte. Okay, you can change the selection preview to none, so it won't show you a preview here, but you can still see the preview here. Anything which is white is selected, black is not selected. So make sure selection preview is none. I want you to see it clearly, and then click on the plus eyedropper tool. Okay, so plus eyedropper tool, and then start clicking on the areas of the background, colors of the background. So we are adding colors. Make sure we do not select a color inside the subject. Okay, select this color, that color, this color. Okay, now once most of it is selected, then you can change the selection preview to black matte or something like that, and then you can just keep on adding areas like this. Let's add this area. There you go. Okay. All right. Looks perfect. Now let's increase the fuzziness slowly, because if you zoom in right now, let's zoom in quite a bit. As you can see, it's very harsh. The selection is very harsh. We cannot go with it. So let's increase the fuzziness to make it soft. If you increase it too much, inside of the subject will be selected as well. We don't want that. As you can see, some of the parts of the subject are being selected. They're not black anymore. So we have to decrease it slowly and gradually to have a respectable amount of fuzziness and still have most of the subject completely black. Here, okay. Now, keep in mind the subject is not selected. The background is. So we need to invert the selection. How do we invert the selection? Simple. Press Ctrl Shift I. Command Shift I on a Mac. Or you can simply go to select inverse. It does the same thing. Okay, now we have the selection. We can click on the mask button. Now We have a selection on a transparent background. Now what I would suggest is create a solid color adjustment layer, okay? Keep it black or something where you can see which areas are not selected properly. So I'm gonna go ahead and select red and put it in the background. So as you can see, there are some colors which are not selected properly. You can also change the color to green to see it more clearly, or black. That totally depends upon you. Let's choose black and hit OK. So this is an area which is not selected properly and we have to work on that. So let's come back to the mask. Simply take the brush and let me show you magic. Okay, to make just the mask visible, you would hold the Alt key or the Option key and click on the mask. Then take the brush, make sure the foreground color is white. Now, if you change the blend mode, and listen to this very carefully, if you change the blend mode to overlay and white is the color, see what happens when you paint. It fills up this area, but if you go extra, it just doesn't spill out, but it fills up these areas. Isn't that interesting, right? So overlay is a great blend mode if you want to fix up masks and stuff, okay? So it will paint white on everything which is brighter than 50% gray and leave aside everything which is darker than 50% gray, or paint a very little bit, and keeps the black black. If you're painting with black, just the opposite will happen. It will make the dark areas darker, and anything which is completely white, it will leave it white if you paint with black. So it's a great blend mode to work on with masks. So right now I'm filling it. There are some areas which cannot be filled, then you would switch back to normal and you would fill it. Okay. All right. Don't worry about the edges of the hair. That can be fixed later, right? That will mostly be in the shadow, so it doesn't really matter. So most of it is selected properly. Well, wow. So hold the Alt or the Option again, click on the mask to bring the subject back. Now all you have to do, just drag this layer, okay? Go to this document and drop it. And you're done. And if you're not able to do it, okay, then you can simply select this layer, press Ctrl or Command C to copy this layer, come back to this one, press Ctrl or Command V. Now this is a feature in the latest version of Photoshop to be able to Ctrl or Command C and Ctrl or Command V, copy and paste layers. All right. Now as you can see, the background is a little off. First of all, let's make the subject smaller. But before we do that, let's convert this into a smart object, right? So that even if we make it smaller or bigger, it doesn't lose its quality. So simply go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, hit OK. It converts that into a smart object. Now let's make the subject smaller. Press Ctrl or Command T and let's make it a little smaller, just like so. It's pretty okay. If she was actually standing, think of it in this way. If she was actually standing right there, how small would she be? She would be somewhere like that small. Don't worry about her body ending right in there abruptly. Don't worry about that. She would be something like that. Okay? Hit enter once you're satisfied. Now we need to crop the image. Press C and crop it. Obviously we have to, because we have to crop it from the bottom. Definitely we have to do that. Crop a little bit from the top. That's fine. Totally depends upon what composition you're looking for. You can crop it from the sides or leave it at that. That's also totally upon you. For this tutorial, I'm going to crop it from the sides. Okay, a little bit. Keep her straight in the middle, like so, and hit enter. Okay, I'm satisfied with this. This looks amazing. Now, we have to match this to the background. Keep in mind that the background is constructed of specific shades of gray. What if we apply the same shades to the subject? Wouldn't that be the same? Okay, so here's how to do it. First of all, let's apply a gradient map of the same shades. What does gradient map do? It maps the colors of the highlights, midtones, and shadows. That's what it is. Okay, so let's go ahead, click on the adjustment layer icon and choose gradient map. But we just want this gradient map on the subject. So click on this little button. It creates a clipping mask and it just limits to the subject. Now this is absolutely not the gradient map that we want. So single click in here. For the highlights, we want a highlight from the background, and for the shadows, we want a shadow from the background. First of all, let's determine the brightest and the darkest areas in the background. Okay, so Hit OK for this time and turn off the subject for this time, for a while, right? Now, let's figure out the darkest and the brightest area. Come back to the background, all right? Now, let's create a curves adjustment layer. Click on the adjustment layer icon and choose curves. Now take this slider on the left, from the left to the right. As you begin to take it, you will see the details go away slowly and gradually. The areas that are still showing the details, as you can see, those areas are the brightest and we need to mark them, okay? How do we mark them? First of all, select the eyedropper tool, okay? And then hold Shift and Alt, Shift and Option on a Mac, and just make a point here. So this is the brightest, so hold that key, Shift and Alt, Shift Option, and click. That makes a point there, that makes a mark there, okay? Now we need to find the darkest area. Do the opposite. Take it back to normal and take the right slider to the left. The area that's still gonna have some stuff left, that's gonna be the darkest. So as I can see, it's on the corner, it's right here over here. It's easier to pick up from the same place. So let's pick up from the same place. Okay, so make a point. This is the darkest, this is the brightest, this is the darkest. Simple, right? Now let's delete the curves, we don't really need it, okay? Make sure in the gradient map adjustment layer, this symbol is selected, not the mask, not the mask. If the mask is selected, here's what will happen, okay? So for example, if the mask is selected and if you want to sample the colors, it just won't sample, it will sample only white. See, it's sampling only white. We don't want that to happen. That's why make sure the symbol is selected. Then once the property is open, single click here, okay? And for the highlights, we will sample this bright area and make sure sample all layers is selected right and right here. Okay, so that is samples from all the layers. And let's sample from here. Select point sample because it's very small. We don't want to average out. So this is the brightest. Hit OK. For the dark areas, this is the darkest. Okay, hit OK. Now I'm gonna make the brightest a little more brighter. So let's go to B, which stands for brightness, a little more brighter than usual. Hit OK, hit OK. Okay, so this looks fine. Now let's turn on the subject. Have a look, much more better. So before, after. However, it still lacks something. It still lacks the dimension and stuff. So how do we get that? Well, simple as well. Single click here. We have not yet worked out the balance. We have to work out the balance. So click in one of the points. See, this is the balance point. So let's work out the balance. Let's take it a little bit to the right. See, now it's making some sense, right? So let's take it a little more to the right. It's too much. I'll take it a little bit to the left. You can control the location from right here. Just click and drag on the location. Okay, so for me 65 is fine. Let's say 65 and hit OK once you're satisfied. Okay, let's collapse this thing. Now it's looking pretty much good, but we need to make some adjustments. What adjustments do you want me to make? So first off, let's make the shadows and stuff. Let's make a shadow of her. So make sure the subject layer is selected. Let's name it subject for your convenience. Okay, and this one is the background. Cool. Let's select the subject and then let's add a drop shadow. Okay, double click on the right hand side of the layer. All right, now let's click on drop shadow. What is the direction of light? Have a look at the subject. What is the direction of light? It's coming from right here, top right. So we will select that angle, which is already selected, something like that. And let's increase the distance. First of all, let's increase the opacity all the way to 100 and then increase the distance a bit like this. Let's increase the size. Make sure the spread is 0 until it looks okay. Let's increase the distance even more. Let's increase the size. And let's decrease the size a bit. I think it's too much. Now here's the thing. The shadows look perfect here. It might not be the case for you. Why is that so? Well, let's have a look. For me, I have selected the color of the shadow to match with that of the background. Have a look. If I double click here, have a look at the shadow. It's not black. As a default, it's always black. If you hit OK, it just doesn't fit in. So how do we determine the shadow color of the background? Simple, right? Just first of all, let's cancel it. Okay. Then all we have to do, just open up the color picker and just pick in the shadows of the background and determine what color is it. Okay. So what is the hex code? 121212. Just keep that number in mind, or simply just copy it. Select it, copy it if you cannot remember it. Okay. Hit OK or cancel. Doesn't really matter at this point. Go back to the drop shadow. If it's blank, change it. So click here, dial in that number. So it's a little bit darker. Let's make it a little brighter. Hit OK, and it perfectly works. Now let's decrease the opacity a bit to this number, and let's increase the distance a bit. Let's decrease the opacity even more. So make sure the shadow color is matching so that it does match with that of the background. So it shouldn't look strange. Okay. You can also try normal. Let's see how it does. Normal looks much more realistic in this case, I guess. Let's make it even more darker. Let's go to 121212. Okay. Whoops. There you go. Okay. Now normal looks much more better here. Okay. Let's control the distance and increase the opacity. Perfectly fine. Now once you're satisfied with this, hit OK. There we have the shadow. Now we have to add some darkness to the edges, the left side. Why? Because the light is coming from the right. This area is in shadows. How can these areas have some light, right? It's just not possible. So let's create a new layer. Make sure this layer is also a clipping mask. So if there's a layer and there's another layer on top of it, and this layer is a clipping mask to this layer, then if you're in this layer and create a layer between those two layers, that layer will also be a clipping mask. If that's not a case, you already know how to make a clipping mask. Hold the Alt key or the Option key, click here. Okay, so hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on the line between these two, creates a clipping mask. Gradient map, we have to create a clipping mask. Hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on it. Both of them are clipping mask to the subject. Okay, now we have another layer. Simply take the brush. Okay, decrease the flow to somewhere around 20%, something like that. Let's go to 20, let's go to 10. Make sure the foreground color is black. Now we need to change the blend mode of this one to soft light. Where is soft light? There it is. And make sure the gradient map is top of it. So accidentally, we don't want it to be completely black, right? So if the layer was on top, okay, and if we were painting, we would have accidentally made it completely black, which will totally destroy the balance of the image. As you can see, this area is completely black, and all these areas, none of the other areas are totally black. So we don't want that to happen. Make the gradient map as a secure top overlay to make sure that the blackest black is not totally black. Because on the gradient map, have a look, on the left, it's not totally black, right? Have a look, right? Okay, let's collapse that and make sure this layer is underneath the gradient map. We don't want so much of a darkness, so let's erase it. Let's select the eraser, erase it, and let's redo it. Take the brush and make sure the flow is 10%, and let's do it slowly around the edges. Make the brush a little smaller, make sure it's soft, and start painting around the edges with black. At this point, I guess I'm gonna increase the flow to 20% to 30%. Let's go to that number and paint around the edges. Simple stuff, very simple stuff. Make sure the blend mode is soft light. Okay, this looks pretty perfect. Looks fine to me. But at the edge, we also have that white fringe. How do we get rid of it? Create one more layer and do not change the blend mode to anything. Let's keep it normal and just start painting around the edge. And this time increase the flow to somewhere around 77 and something like that number, high number, and just keep painting. Don't worry about the edge. It looks a little strange, but don't worry about it so much. Okay. Now, it looks pretty not that dark, so we're gonna make it a little more darker by going back to gradient maps, and let's take this a little to the right, okay? And make it a little more dark, like that. Now, as you can see, that's much more matching and much more popping out. So we can control this. Okay, that looks realistic. Hit OK. Let's zoom out and let's have a look. It looks fine. Now let's get back to the drop shadow and make it a little more distancy. And let's decrease the opacity. Now keep it at whatever number it was. I'm satisfied with 90-ish and hit OK. Looks perfect, looks perfect. Now what else we can do? Let's add a curves. Make sure whatever you add underneath the gradient map. Make sure it doesn't throw off the balance of the image. So let's go ahead and add some curves and we will be good to go. I mean, yep, done. And at the end, whenever you are merging a subject with that of the background, okay, let's add some. Okay, keep in mind that whenever you're matching a subject to another background, at the end, apply an effect or an adjustment layer, whatever there is, to just make them one. Okay, so in this case, you can add a color lookup table, whatever you like. So let's go ahead and add, let's try color lookup tables. Let's see how they look. You can also add some curves, whatever you like. Let's just scroll it in and keep on scrolling. See, that looks interesting. I like it. Crisp warm is very interesting, right? So you can scroll through this. Edgy amber, wow, that looks really fantastic as well. This one is amazing. So you can choose whatever you like over here. This one is a completely different look. I totally love it. This one looks fine as well. So you can choose whatever you like. I'm not able to choose one. Every one of them looks fantastic. So I'm gonna keep it at probably this is fine as well. This is nice. Edgy amber really looked great to me. So I'm going to keep it at that. So you can try this, you can try the other one, you can try a lot of other stuff. So there it is. There you go. That's how you match the subject with that of the background. Let me show you the before and after. So this is how we came in. If we just turn off this and turn off all of these effects and turn this off, see, it's not matching at all, right? So let's just start turning them on. Look how gradually we went through and turn on the effects, and that's how we match them. You can also keep it without the effect, keep it with the effect, decrease the opacity if you want to, and that's how we do it. And to blend the background of the subject even better, you can also try this. So let's just delete it for a moment. You can add that later at any point, but let's try this as well. So let's go ahead and create a levels adjustment layer, and we can add a very nice vignette to make them one. Let's take this slider from the right to the left. It makes the bright areas darker. Now, once you're in the mask, make sure the mask is selected. Take the brush, foreground color as black. Press X to toggle between the foreground and the background. Make the brush bigger, make it harder. Okay, and then on the subject's face, just dab it once. Okay, make sure the opacity and flow is 100. So it was not 100. Make sure it's 100. Dab it. Okay. Now, with the help of the transformation tool, press Ctrl or Command T. You can just control how it looks. Maybe something like this. Control the spotlight. This is just like a spotlight on her, right? It looks great. Now all you have to do, open the properties of the mask. Select this. Click on the properties. If you cannot see the properties, go to Windows, make sure properties is checked, and make sure you're in the property of the mask. So this is the property of the adjustment layer. Here, it's the property of the mask. Increase the feather. There you go. Now, even at this point, you can press Ctrl or Command T and just play with it. Now, also, here's an essential part. Also, we want to make sure that the vignette does not make the edges of the image darker than that piece of gray that we selected on the left side of gradient map. Makes sense? Confusing, right? So let's turn this off for a second. Let's go back to gradient map. See this gray? It's not completely black, it's gray, right? 161616. Okay, so you want to make sure that the vignette that we are adding, it just doesn't make it completely black. So make sure that you have that opacity in control. It's too dark. Make sure you don't apply it too much. A little bit is fine, just like this. Okay, you can also control it with curves. So you can add a curves adjustment layer, and you can clip it to the levels by holding the Alt key or the Option key. Click on the line between these two, or simply click on that button, and you can control that vignette from here as well. to make sure that's matching. Okay, just a little bit, and then you can keep the opacity to whatever number you like. Doesn't really matter. And there you go, right? Doesn't this look amazing? So here's the before with just the subject on the background, not matched, and here is the after. So that's how you match the subject with the background in a monochromatic environment. Here's a quick recap. First of all, we're gonna have to select the subject. And how do we make a selection of the subject? There are tons of ways of doing that. You just need to find out what separates the subject from the background. Is it color? Is it contrast? Or if it's just a noisy background, you might have to manually go ahead and select that by using the pen tool or the select and mask. And there are tons of tutorials in this channel on how to do that. Now, once you have made a selection of the subject, create a mask, click on the mask button and bring it over to the background. Then, because the background is monochromatic, we added a gradient map to replicate the shades on the subject. Okay, so we figured out the darkest shade in the background and the brightest shade in the background and applied that as a gradient map on both sides. Highlights as the brightest shade and shadows as the darkest shade. So on the left hand side we have the darkest shade, right hand side the brightest shade. After we did that, it was still not matching. So we maintained and corrected the balance. Once you click on one of those points, you have a point appear in the middle. That is the balance. You can control the location of it so that it looks right. Then we added a shadow, a simple drop shadow, and then we created some layers and added some darkness around the shadows. Then to make it all, you can add vignettes, you can add color lookup tables, curves, right? You can do a lot of other stuff. But the main idea here is this. We need to make sure that the overall shades of the background matches with that of the subject. And that's pretty much it. Hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to give us a like, and also do not forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe. Ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss any other future tips, tricks or tutorials. Thank you so much for watching, and I would like to take this moment to thank all these nice and amazing people for supporting this channel on Patreon and helping keep PiXimperfect free for everybody forever. Thank you so much for all the support. Thank you for watching again. I'll see you guys in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.